it in several Facebook groups while waiting for more people to join. So please give me a few minutes to set it up. Okay?
No problem. Got it.
Okay. Okay. So this is good. Hi, I'm Osama, and this is my podcast on technology and society. Today, we have Mr. Daniel TANI with us, the Director of Foundation Grants at United States Japan Foundation and the ex-astronaut at NASA. Hi, Daniel. I'm very happy to have you here with us today, and thank you for your valuable time.
Osama, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be with you today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel. So I invited you today to talk about your journey as an astronaut and talk about space, in particular Mars. Space inspires me personally, and I'm sure it does inspire many of us. Astronauts are very lucky to have the chance to get outside our planet and take a look at it from outer space. So, the first question that comes to my mind is how can one become an astronaut? Are there any specific requirements? Maybe you can talk about your own experience and your path to becoming an astronaut at NASA.
Sure. Well, I can speak to how an American would become an astronaut because that's all I know. And I think that it's similar for the other space agencies around the world. I don't know if Morocco has a path for astronaut, but I hope they will sometime soon. But so I'll just tell you what it is for an American, because that's what I know.
Yes.
To be selected to be an astronaut for NASA, in the American space program, an individual has to have a college degree in either science or science or engineering or mathematics. And then they have to have several years of experience. They don't want to hire a very young person. We hire every once in a while. We'll get astronauts in their late 20s, but mostly astronauts when they're selected are in their 30s, so they have some experience doing something else. And then so really the only requirements to become an astronaut, a NASA astronaut, is to be a U.S. citizen and to have a college degree in math, engineering, or science. Now, once you have some those basic qualifications, then things get a little bit more hard to control, like your health. And so when they try to find astronauts, they try to, or they during your interview, they will do all sorts of medical tests to make sure that you're in just great health. They don't want to spend a lot of time and money training you and then have you have a medical problem, or certainly the worst case would be a medical problem in space. And then it narrows down even further, and you go to an interview, and you interview with a panel of astronauts and other NASA people. And I think at that point, it's just luck. It's just the type of person you are and the type of person that they're looking for. And so my story was when I was an engineer, and I was working in an aerospace company, and I'd met a few astronauts and got to know them as people, and found out that being an astronaut is just a job that you can apply for. I decided that I would apply for it. And for the first 2 or 3 selections, they do a selection every year or 2 years usually. And for the first 2 selections, my application was rejected, and that's exactly what I completely expected. Is they would say, no, I'm sorry, keep trying. And boy, I was surprised on that 3rd time when they called me and said, would you like to interview to be an astronaut? And I said, of course. So I went down for an interview. It took a whole week. It's an entire week at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. And again, mostly medical evaluations and some psychological evaluations. Now we do some skill testing to sort of simulate what you might be doing or asked to do in space. And then I got very, very lucky. I got selected to be an astronaut on my first time through the interview process. There was 35 of us in our class, and we got selected to be the 16th group to ever be selected by NASA. And that was in 1996. And then I spent 16 years at NASA and had 3 fantastic space missions with them.
Yes, interesting. There is a question: how many applicants do they choose on every selection, and how many participants usually are applying?
So it's gotten more and more. So I think there was a selection in 2019, 2 years ago. I believe they had almost 20,000 applications to go through, and I think they selected 8 out of those 20,000. So it's a tough job to get. Lots of people want to be an astronaut and have very good qualifications. And so generally the way it works is out of that, let's say it's, I think 18,000, maybe 20,000. It's a big panel has a job of going through those and whittling it down to about 100, and they'll interview the select 100, and then from that interview, then they'll pick however many astronauts they need.
Okay, interesting. I hope your journey will inspire our Moroccan youth to dream big.
I hope so too.
Yes. My second question is, why exploring space? As we all know, NASA and other space agencies are spending billions of dollars, almost the GDP of some small countries, on space missions. The last one we witnessed is the NASA Perseverance mission. Can you talk more about why space and how that can benefit humanity? And lastly, why are the last few missions focusing on Mars?
Well, why space? Well, I believe that all human beings are interested in what's over there, what's over that hill or across that river or across that ocean. I believe that humans have just an innate desire to want to know, to keep exploring and going farther and farther. Certainly there's a lot on Earth that we can explore too, but like down in the oceans, but there's also going out into space. And we can learn a lot by going out into space. We can learn a lot about how the planet was formed and how the solar system was formed. Lots of big questions that we can learn because we can go gather data, and we can go take measurements, for instance. But there's also just something about people wanting to have another person go experience these kinds of things. So I believe that's why we do space exploration. Now, why Mars? Well, Mars is the closest planet to us, or it's one of our neighboring planets. It has it's about roughly the same size as Earth, about a third of the size of Earth, and we think that there might have been possibly life there. We think there was water there. We think there might still be water there, and we think that there may be signs of life. Now that's really exciting, and that would answer a lot of questions about how did our life form on Earth, why, and how common is it, and how common if the next planet had life in it, then now you got to think maybe a bunch of other planets have or had life on them. The reason Mars is in the news right now, with 3 different missions all sort of at Mars at the same time, is that the Earth goes around the sun, and so does Mars, and the way they synchronize, they are closest together about every 2 years, every 26 months, and then they go through again, and they're far away, they get further away, and then they get closer together every 26 months. And so when they send spacecraft to Mars, they use that, they time their missions so that the flight to Mars is the shortest. And so what happens is everybody wants to launch to Mars about 7 or 8 months ago, and then all the spacecraft arrive at Mars at the same time because they're taking the shortest path to Mars. And so that's right now why there are 3 spacecraft that, including the Perseverance, that arrived at Mars at the same time. But in the bigger question, it's we have a laboratory in low Earth orbit, the International Space Station, and we've been to the moon. We probably will go back to the moon, but Mars right now is the big prize. That's really the exciting, a different planet, putting another human being and rovers and robots on a different planet. That's really exciting. There's a lot we can learn.
Yes, interesting. Well, could you give us examples of something we learned out there that helped humanity on Earth?
Well, gee, there's all sorts of things. So there are direct things that we learn from space, and there are some indirect things. Some direct things, like we do a lot of experiments now on the International Space Station, and the International Space Station is basically a laboratory, and it's flying around the Earth, and it has an environment that has no gravitational forces. Things float in the space station, and like other laboratories, when we do experiments, you can do experiments. Now you can eliminate gravity as one of the forces. You can't do that anywhere else in the world. And it turns out that when you remove the gravitational forces, other forces become much more interesting. Molecules that attract to each other, or other forces that interact with things that you can't see on the Earth because gravity is too big. So now we can make types of crystals, or we can observe very, very minor electrical attraction and because of that, we can understand how things work better. So we can make better drugs, or we can make better materials, or we can make better semiconductors, because we're smarter, because we know how things work, how much gravity plays a role, and how much other forces play a role. So those are some direct results of space exploration, or the space program that helps us. There are indirect ones, like their classic example is when we were trying to go to the moon, and we had to take a big computer and we had to make it small so we can fit it into a spacecraft. And so the people that learned how to miniaturize these computers made it possible for all of us to have computers in our pockets, or on our wrist, or they were the people that had to figure out how to take something that's really big and make it really small. There's also, we need to, for astronauts going to Mars, when we eventually go to Mars, one of the big problems is, we humans, we drink a lot of water. We drink water during the day. We need water, okay? And we drink it, and it's in our food, and then it comes out of our body, right? Every day, that's what it does. That's what our body does. Well, we can't bring liters. People drink about 2 liters of water a day. We can't bring 2 liters of water for every crew member to Mars. It's just too much water. It's too expensive. It's too heavy. So we need to learn how to regenerate our water. And so right now on the space station, we have a urine regenerator that takes the urine that the astronauts produce, and it filters it and it distills it, and it creates drinking water. And so these are technologies that we're going to need to go to Mars. Well, these are technologies that can help people in or places that don't have a lot of clean drinking water, that will need to regenerate the water that they can drink and purify it. So those are other types of things where we're trying to solve problems in space or for space travel, but they have direct usage helping humanity down here on Earth.
So, Daniel, I fully agree on what you said, but still many people are objecting, saying that first we have to deal with our problems here on Earth, such as poverty, education, healthcare, and so many other issues. What is your take on that?
I completely agree that we need to address those problems. We have many problems on Earth, and unfortunately, money is one of the resources that's scarce, and you have to decide how to spend your money. And so I completely understand that people think, hey, really, we spent $20 million on that rocket, when $20 million would feed so many children. I completely agree with that. But every country, every society has to decide how they're going to spend their money. Every family has to decide how to spend their money. And I would argue that for families that have very little money, that have to worry about how much they're going to eat and how they're going to warm their house, or if they can afford a house, stuff like that. I would argue that every once in a while, it's good for those families to take a little bit of money and go to the bookstore and get a book so that they can learn about something else, or they can have a discussion and they can expand their knowledge and their horizon. And I think that that's a smart investment. And you're right, those dollars or that amount of money could have gone to food, but I also think that it's good to feed your brain and to sort of expand your people's horizons. So that's what countries and governments have to decide to do. Of course, they want to feed everybody, and of course, they want to keep everybody safe. But it's also smart to take a little bit of that money and to allow, first of all, space programs are good because they allow really smart and energetic people to work on something really interesting. You want to give people something really interesting to work on, and space is really interesting. So now you have something that will interest people, keep people motivated. And again, there are like these unintended benefits. You don't know really what's going to come out of it, but when you invent something interesting, it may certainly well benefit mankind. And there's something about space that's very motivating to people. So having a space program may motivate kids to learn science and to learn mathematics so that they can participate later. So there might be a motivational aspect to having a space program. So I do understand that money is scarce and we want to do good things with our money. And so I would just say that doing something that expands your perspective and your imagination and your knowledge is important to do also. And I think that it's good that societies decide to spend some money doing that, because I think that's going to be how we grow, how we evolve as humans.
Yes, nice. But I have a question. What about the risks of flying to Mars? Could you explain to the public the challenges the space industry faces when flying to space, and how we can be sure that one day we can safely fly humans off into other planets?
Yeah, no, there's lots of dangers, lots of risks, and it's very, very difficult to fly to Mars.
Yeah.
Like I said, Mars and the Earth move relative to each other, and they're only close to each other every 26 months. So once you get to Mars, it's going to take 6 or 8 or 10 months to get to Mars. Once you get there, you cannot come right home. You're going to be there for 2 years, over 2 years, because when you come back to Earth, you want Earth to be as close as possible. So you have to wait that time. So now a mission to Mars is going to be 3, 4, 5, 4 years or so, right, to get there, do your work, and come back. So at minimum, you're looking at over 4 years. Wow, keeping somebody alive for 4 years with very limited stuff. I mean, the only food they're going to have is the food they bring. Probably, maybe we'll learn how to grow food. The water I said before, but also the communications and the mental ability to be isolated for so long is a challenge. So the biggest concerns are radiation. If you're away from the Earth and the Earth protects you because it has a magnetic environment, that protects you from a lot of radiation. So radiation, just the logistics of how to live for 4.5 years or so, the technical challenge of getting a rocket that will reliably get you to Mars and reliably back, and the psychological challenge of who do you select to, what kind of group of people do you select to go on such a very dangerous and long mission, and that won't, and there won't be, or that the problems that the group has inside of itself aren't so great that it breaks the project apart. So it's an interesting question. Do you send all of one gender, all men or all women? Or do you send couples that know each other, maybe married couples, or couples that don't know each other, or the single people? It's a very interesting psychological question. So these are very hard questions that we're going to have to address before we think that we're going to be able to send somebody to Mars and then come back.
Interesting. So, Mr. Daniel, how an astronaut is trying to stay for that long period on Mars? Besides that, what is the role of an astronaut?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that or something? What was the first? Say that question again.
I say, how an astronaut is trying to stay for that long period on Mars?
How are they trained to stay in the long? How are they trained?
Trying to stay for that long period on Mars.
Yeah, I don't know yet. We part of the reason we have the International Space Station, one of the objectives, or actually pretty much the main objective of the International Space Station, is to learn about the issues of staying in space or staying in a spacecraft for a long period of time. And now, for now, we say 6 months is a long period of time. We had a couple people stay up to a year. And so we're getting a lot of data on what it's like to be away from the planet for 6 months to a year. Well, we're going to have to ramp that up, and we're going to have to learn, are there different changes when you look at 3 or 4 years? That's sort of the next step. These are things that we're going to have to learn. Back on the psychological question. When we're on the space station, we look out the window and we're 200 miles from the Earth, and we have a beautiful view of the Earth. And if you stay at the window long enough, you'll see your hometown go by, and you'll see the place you went to school or something familiar. It's wonderful. When we go to Mars, after being in the rocket for 2 or 3 days, you'll look back at the Earth, and the Earth will be a little marble in the sky, beautiful marble. But then 2 or 3 days later, you'll look back, and the Earth will be a blue speck in the sky. And then a month later, it'll be hard to find Earth because it'll look like a star, or maybe one of the planets. If you go out in the night sky and you can find Mars, or you can find Venus, that's what it will look like. I think people will feel very alone, very isolated when they realize their home planet is a speck in the sky that they can hardly see. And I think that's going to be a challenge psychologically also. And I don't know how you train for that. I think that there are some groups that are trying to train that on the ground and separate people out for months at a time and look at that psychological aspect. But I don't know how we really train somebody for a 4-year mission to be so far away.
Okay. So, for how many years do you think we should wait to see the SpaceX trips taking non-astronaut to space? And will you go yourself?
So how long should we wait for did you say SpaceX to take people to space? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So they're doing it now. If you can buy a seat on a Crew Dragon that SpaceX will take you, you can enter a contest. I understand that will take you on a ride. Well, but when will it be routine or where anybody can go buy a seat? I don't know. I hope in my lifetime. I hope in my lifetime people can decide that they're going to save some money for a special occasion and save up for 4 or 5 years and have enough money to go buy a ride on a rocket somewhere if that's really what they want to do. Right now, that's not possible. Right now, you have to be really rich if you want to do that. And I don't foresee a time when it's going to be, everybody can afford it. You just pull out your credit card and go right on a rocket. But I think there's a time when it will be a special occasion. You can save up, make it a goal, and have enough money to go on a rocket trip. I don't know. I hope that's in my lifetime. I hope that's in the next 20 or 30 years.
Yes. Mr. Daniel, are you ready to take the risk again and go to space on a mission to discover Mars?
No, for me, I'm that Mars, as we said, is a really long trip. It's a long mission, and when I went to space, I was young, and my family was very young, and I was at a different place. Now I have children in school and things to look forward to, and so I know that we've got. As I said, there are 20,000 people for NASA that sent in their application. There are a lot of people that really, really want to go. And at this point, they're probably better qualified than I am. And so I would not jump on a chance to go to Mars. I might go to the moon. That would be a much shorter trip. But Mars, for me, is just too far, too much time away from my family.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel. Let's take a look in the comments and see if you can
Sure.
answer some questions. There is a good question from comments. What's the role of AI in the future of astronauts?
Well, from what I know about AI, I don't know all the details of AI, but what's really good now is the rockets, which is a really dangerous part of getting into space, has a lot of intel. I don't know if it's AI, but a lot of intelligent systems in their computers, so that if an engine breaks down during a flight, the whole system knows what to do, how to reconfigure, or it knows how to tell the astronauts what to do, what buttons to press. Those kind of smart systems are really really going to be valuable. Now, I think you can expand that AI to the spaceship or the space station, and we might envision systems that either repair themselves or know how to interact with the astronauts to help repair some problem or some issue. So I guess I think that astronauts have to deal with pretty complex machines in a very harsh environment, spacecraft, or maybe their space suit or a rover or something. And I think the way AI can help is to help that interaction, that we call it man-machine interaction, the interaction between the human and the machinery, so that problems can be resolved and operations can be successfully done.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Daniel. There is a question from Fatima. Can they one day send a human astronaut to explore Mars, or just robots?
No, we hope to send humans to Mars and have them build a habitat and live on the surface of happens in Gosh, I don't know. Some people say 10 or 15 years. Some people think it's going to be longer than that. I think it's going to be longer than that. But that's what we want to do. We want to figure out how to send people to Mars. So I hope we get there.
Okay. What do you think about send waste to space?
I guess that's interesting. I guess if you have something that you just don't want on Earth, I guess you could put it on a rocket and launch it into space. It's very expensive to put stuff in space, and so you have to decide why you would throw stuff away in space and not at the bottom of a big hole or something on Earth. So I guess that's possible. The opposite is true. When we have waste in space, like from the space station, we pack it up in a cargo ship that brought us supplies. And once we've emptied it out, we fill it up with trash and let it fly off. And it deorbits and it uses the atmosphere, the friction in the atmosphere to burn up. So it burns itself up. And that's how we get rid of trash in space. But I guess it's possible to throw stuff away in space. You don't want it to interact with anything. You don't want to take all your garbage and ship it to the moon. And now you've contaminated the moon with all your garbage, or Mars. So it's certainly an interesting idea, but I've never heard of it before.
Okay. There is another question, Mr. Daniel. How do you generally deal with space accidents during space expeditions?
Well, let's see. So I'm not sure what aspect people are asked that question asked, so I'll take the easy one, which is what happens when something breaks during your mission and it doesn't go right. And so that is most of our training. Most of our training has to do with, the solar panel broke, or the computers don't work, or whatever. And so we do a lot of training. We have to learn how the systems work so that we understand what broke and what can be done to fix it. We have big manuals of procedures that help us go through the steps to fix something. And so during space exploration, stuff will break, and we have to learn how to deal with that. If this question has to do with space accidents, meaning fatal, big deal accidents, we all the astronauts understand it's a dangerous job to have, and we have all lost friends in the space program. 19 years ago, we lost Space Shuttle Columbia, and I had 3 good friends on board, and so it's very difficult. But many jobs, and just even driving down the street is dangerous, and so everything has a level of danger. And I think all the astronauts accept that that's part of our job, and we don't like it. But we know that the bigger picture of doing the exploration is more important.
Okay. There is a good question from Facebook comment.
Okay.
Do you think developing countries will ever be able to launch their own space programs, or are they already too late?
No, not too late at all. And many countries are getting into the launch game, or the launch business. The hardest thing to get is a place to launch your rockets from, because you want to launch them over the water, and you don't want, because if it blows up, you don't want it to land on a city or people. And so, but the technology is such that many countries can build rockets. Some universities are building rockets, not to go all the way to space, but to go very, very high. And then the most exciting thing is that satellite technology is getting really tiny, where you can build a satellite this big and either build a rocket to launch it, or find a ride on some other rocket. And so now many small countries, and as I said, even universities, and with these satellites, even some secondary schools, high schools, are able to build satellites and that do interesting work and do interesting things. And so it's a really exciting time to be in the aerospace industry, because it's the barriers to entry, as they say, are getting shorter or smaller and smaller. And so many countries and smaller organizations can start getting into space.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel. Mr. Yasin asked, I'm Moroccan and my dream is to be astronaut. Is it possible? Or only Americans, Russian, and Chinese could be astronauts?
First of all, I got to visit Morocco a couple years ago.
Yes.
There was a
One-shot.
the moonshot. It was
Moonshot.
fantastic. I really enjoyed my time in
Casablanca.
Morocco. Yeah, that's right. And I got to meet some prize winners. I got to meet many Moroccans and some that won a prize for an essay contest. And I was really impressed with the talent in Morocco. And so obviously you're smart enough and you're talented enough to be astronauts. So will Morocco, the country, decide to have an astronaut program? I hope so. But that's up to you voters, I guess, or whoever decides what is going to happen in the Moroccan government. There are other ways you can. There are several astronauts at NASA that during their careers became American citizens, and then they were eligible to become NASA astronauts, or the same for the European Space Agency, or the Canadian Space Agency, or the Japanese Space Agency. But what I do is what I hope is that many countries will develop their own astronaut program and then figure out how they fit into the whole astronaut world. As you said, right now it's primarily America, Russia, China, but Japan, European Space Agency, and Canada has a big space agency. So I hope so. I would love to see a Moroccan astronaut. I really would.
I hope so, Mr. Daniel. Okay, thank you so much for what you're doing, Mr. Daniel, and thank you so much for this conversation.
I appreciate you having me on. Wonderful questions, and I got to think about my time in Morocco and really relive the wonderful times I had there, and now I can't wait to get back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.